In this video, I'm going to take my K24 swapped Ford Escort and try and make it all-wheel drive. Let's jump into it. Guys, we are back today working on the Ford Escort, and I have assembled some parts that is going to help us make it all-wheel drive. And I have them kind of laid out here on the ground, and so we'll jump into what parts I found to try and convert this 96 Ford Escort to be all-wheel drive and compatible with the Honda K24 all-wheel drive system. So let's jump into the parts and we'll go from there. So here's a look at the parts I got for the all-wheel drive system. Some came from the donor CRV, like the rear diff and the drive shaft, and some came from the viscous coupler is from a Land Rover Freelander viscous coupler, and then the subframe and control arms, knuckles are all from a Mazda 323 GTX, which is an all-wheel drive Mazda 323. So hopefully I can make this subframe work with the CRV diff and then a combination of the Land Rover and the Honda CRV drive shaft. So the first challenge of this build so far was the axles. I thought I was going to be able to use Mazda Miata axles, so I ordered up a set here. And unfortunately, this side is bigger than this model because this is an older model. So the knuckles and hubs are smaller diameter. Luckily, when I bought the subframes, I got two of them. One was complete with axles and diff, but it was a lot more rusty than this. So I ended up taking the axles out of that. And these work, they're just a smaller outer CV spline. So if I do upgrade, I could get the later model Mazda 323 and get those hubs and knuckles. And then I could use these Mazda Miata axles, which are really easy to come by, and they are going to be bigger than these, so that would be an upgrade later on down the road that I can do. But for now, I'm going to use what I have in the stock old axles. And then the next problem, we have to convert this hub flange to the CRV diff, which the stock CRV uses a CV axle that the stubs go into the diff. So the splines go into the diff, all incorporated into the CV axle. So we have to convert this 4-bolt flange to the CRV style. So let's jump into that. So I took this, cut this off, took this off, took this, cut it off here, and then put this onto here. So CRV Mazda. Guys, here's a look at the CRV axle that I just cut down to length. I ended up taking 2 inches off of this side, so I put it on a lathe, cut this off, and then made this surface flat, and then I just cleaned up this edge. And then this is the 323 stub shaft, and I cut that end off, the spline section off, and then this is flat now. And I left a little lip here that fits in to the CRV one nicely, and then this is flat and this is flat, so when it goes down and meets together, I'm gonna be able to weld this and it should stay true. Also, I'm gonna put it back in the lathe, center it up on this, clamp the chuck on this, So this will be centered and this will be centered. And then I'll go ahead and weld it on there and then finish weld it on the bench. So we just finished up the CV stub shaft that go into the diff, and here's a look at them finished. I did end up doing a TIG pass around the whole thing, and came out pretty good. And just to recap, this part is CRV, stock CRV CV cup. I cut it off, and then this is the stock Mazda 323 mounting flange. I cut that off, and then I welded the CRV to the Mazda flange. And I did it all on the lathe, so it is centered up. And so it shouldn't have an issue with vibration. But we're gonna throw these in the diff and see if they fit. And for reference, I did cut the CV cups at a certain length. That way, when they're in the diff, it is 9¼ inches from flange to flange. And the reason that I did 9¼ from outside to outside was I measured the stock Mazda 323 diff, and from flange to flange it was 9¼ So I figured if I'm going to use the stock axles and stock subframe, I should make it the right width so my axles are the right length and I shouldn't have many issues. So that's why one of them is a little bit shorter, 1/2 inch, than this side, but I wanted to make sure that it was the right overall distance in width. So let's throw these in and see if they fit. Next, I'm gonna take the stock CRV. This is how it mounted into the CRV chassis, right up to the floor. And there was these two 16 mil or 17 mil bolts. Take this off. Already got it all loose. And then it had this rear mount with the rubber and this like counterweight. So I'm gonna take these off. I already got these loose. And we're gonna test fit it into the Mazda subframe. And then this is upside down. So I'm gonna have to flip the diff and see. Now here's a look at the diff. You can see how the flange bolts up to stock, and then the CRV spines fit in. The diff is sitting in there. It looks like I'm gonna have to cut out this front mount. That was for the old diff, original diff. So I might cut this down and then make a new mount for the CRV. It has 2 bolts in the front. And then in the back, it's looking like I'm gonna have to cut out of this subframe, because this was the original mount. So maybe I'll make another mount. I know I watched that pink Escort, and he did a simple mount with some square tubing. So I might replicate something like that. And yeah, so I think we have an idea where we need to cut the subframe. So I'm gonna mark it, pull this diff out, and go from there. Get the rear old diff mount off. I can clearly mark where the CRV needs to go. So I'm gonna notch the subframe out. It does look like I need to go a little to the left with the diff because this boot's compressed. This boot's a little expanded. These do tighten up, I just don't have the nuts on there. So we're gonna trim this rear subframe. I got the subframe cut out around where the diff's gonna protrude through, and then I need to make a mount from here and then comes across so I can connect the diff mount, kind of like the stock one had. It just had 2 bolts and it went in like this or right through, so like this. I need to make up another one. I'll probably just make up a whole new one because this one, the bushing had the bolt I had to cut out. So I'm probably gonna make with some steel tubing something that comes across, and then I can make some flanges to connect the diff. So right now I already cut out one side. I have a hole here for the stock mount location, and then I'm gonna make another one right here. So I'm gonna cut that out right now. Just marked it. I'm gonna cut it out now. Alright, so I got the rear of the car jacked up, got the wheels off, and getting ready to pull the front wheel drive rear subframe. So I'm going to leave the struts hung up and probably the front control arm, and I'm going to drop the rest. There's 2 bolts right here that hold the subframe on each side, and then there's a lower control arm bolt. And then we have the e-brake cable to unhook. So I'm going to do that now. got the rear subframe pulled out. Came out pretty good. Had a couple bolts snap, but nothing that we're worried about. I did drop the exhaust to get that out of the way, and that's going to have to get remade anyways. So I'm pretty happy we got this out, and hopefully we can get the fuel tank out next, and then yeah, get some stuff cleaned up and get it ready for the all-wheel drive subframes and do the first test fit. So here's an update. I got the stock Escort rear subframe, control arms, brakes, everything off. And then I have the new Mazda 323 with the new CRV Diff, modified little stub axles, and then my new mount back here. Pretty simple little mount. And then I haven't mounted the front because I want to get this up in there and then get the diff angle correct, and then I'll fully weld the back. I just have one tiny little tack right there to kind of hold it, but I still have to set the angle of the diff, so I wanted to wait to fully weld that in. So I just have to flip this over, slide it in, and we'll try and see how well it lines up. Alright guys, so I just pulled the rear subframe back out. I did tack the diff mount in the back a little more sturdy, and then I cut out around the front two mounts, and I'm gonna add a piece of angle iron and then drill 2 holes and weld that into the subframe so the front of the diff has 2 mounting holes, and then I'm gonna weld the rear portion of the 2 tabs onto the rear diff mount. here's a look at the finished front diff mount, and then the rear. I threw some primer on there, and I fully welded these two tabs in the back, and then I fully welded these this piece of angle iron. So it looks pretty good. I just primed it for now, and then we're gonna shove it back under and get the wheels put on and check the fitment. I did have to order new lug nuts because this bolt pattern is the smaller, or the 4x114, and the Escort was using the 4x100. So I had to order special small lug nuts for these wheels. So the front will be 4x100, and the rear is going to be 4x114. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and slide this under and get this set up in. Next, I'm gonna work on the drive shaft. In the drive shaft, I have a Freelander viscous coupler drive shaft. This was out of Land Rover Freelander, and it has this slip yoke here, and then the viscous coupler, and then the second rear drive shaft. And so I'm going to convert this over with the parts I have here. And these parts are new Spicer 1310 U-joints. This one's going to be for the back, and then this one's a slip yoke for the front. So hopefully these are the right size to cut that drive shaft up, and then hopefully get these welded on. And so we're going to do that next. You guys seen me cut this one off with the cutoff wheel, and then here is the new one. It's like a press fit. I can show you guys, pop this out, hopefully. But I had to shave down the weld with the cutoff, or the Dremel. So I shaved off the inside. There was just a little bit of weld left, and then now this is like a press fit. Once you get it lined up, it fits in there really well. So that should be nice and tight to weld. Get it lined up where this yoke is level like that, and then this yoke should be level as well. So they're in phase. And then we'll go ahead and weld it up, and then we'll get the front portion with the new slip yoke welded on. Alright guys, so I just got back, and here is a look at the drive shaft. This is the Freelander drive shaft, with the new weld-on yokes, and then the slip shaft with the 1310 joints. I still have to fully weld this up, but I wanted to get this bolted up in the car, up under there, check the length, and make sure everything fits. But yeah, it's just tacked up for now, and then we can fully weld it once I know it's gonna fit right. This up under the car, I did get these aftermarket bearings to replace these two, like carrier bearings. So before I throw it in there, I'm gonna put these in. These are for a BMW, so I'll put the link to these or the part number on the screen. These are only really cheap, less than 20 bucks each, compared to some other name brand companies that are trying to sell these as Freelander all-wheel drive specific bearings. So hopefully these ones work. Save over $100 doing it this way, just getting them from Rock Auto. So I just have to take off, there's a 17 millimeter bolt on each side, and then we can pull these yokes off and hopefully get these bearings replaced. So I took this out. It came off. So jumping under the car, we got the subframe bolted in with these 1/2-inch bolts, and then got the diff in and driveshaft mounted. Just a simple piece of flat bar, and I used riv nuts on the chassis, 2 on each side, and then also 2 here. Got the driveshaft bolted in. Still have to weld it yet, but we're making headway. Right now I want to pull the rear diff front pump off, and so to do that there's a bunch of 8 millimeters. I want to do that so I can pull out the clutch pack and pin it. Since we are running the viscous coupler, we can now pin this rear diff and make it just straight through power. So I'm going to take this off and then take all the 8 mils and then the nut here off, and we'll get that clutch pack out. So I just pulled the cover off all the 8 millimeter bolts, and it just slid off. You can see the clutch packs. These are the clutch packs. We're gonna take all those off, and inside of here there's a drum, so we'll look at this outside. So I just got the front cover pulled out from under the car. I did end up hammering on the shaft. Got this flange off. After you take the nut off, obviously, and then this is what we will be pinning, is this clutch pack. So inside there's clutch plates and friction plates. So we want to make this inner spline and then this outer spline one unit. And so by doing that, we're gonna weld this cover on, and then we're gonna drill some holes, run a pin through the clutch packs and the steel disc, and locking it, making this one unit. And then we can take the pump unit off, and we don't have to rely on the dual pump putting pressure to the clutches, since now we have the viscous coupler. So now I'm gonna go ahead and weld this around here and then drill out for our pins to install. so I just got done welding the cover plate onto the basket, and then I went ahead and welded the clutch plates on the sides on 4 spots. And then now I'm gonna drill through the top, and then once it's drilled, we can drop pins in and weld those in. These side welds are kind of doing the same thing. Maybe it's a little extra. I guess you could weld up all of them, but the pins are like a definite, it's not gonna slip. But yeah, this isn't gonna hurt either. So gonna go ahead and drill these holes out. All right, guys, so here is a look at the first hole I drilled. I chucked it up. It was a 6mm bit, and then just because I had these 6mm bolts, and these are gonna fit just like that, locking all the clutch plates in the disc together. I'm gonna probably do either 4 or 5 holes, and then I am gonna cut them down to length like this. And then once it's down flush, I'll go ahead and just fusion weld that together so those don't come out on both sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish drilling these out and then cutting these bolts down so they're nice and flush with the surface. put Honda Bond on the mating surface of that, and then I cleaned up this flange surface, and I went ahead and put the pinned and welded clutch pack back on. And then don't forget your shim right here. And then yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and throw this on there.